Hello and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial where today we're going to go ahead and create a mystery tree design. Can you see the shape within the tree? Well, if you clicked on this video, you can already tell from the title. We've got a hidden crow within here of our tree. So you're going to want to grab all of the requirements for today's design. So that's the canvas size, the palette, so you can follow along with the exact same colors, the guide, and anything else that you'll need is over on my Patreon, completely free. So you can grab all of the requirements for today's design. And then when you're done with today's design, make sure to tag me in your finished creations, say on Instagram. It's great to see all of your finished work. And I need your help on hitting my goal of hitting 50,000 subscribers. So make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and help me grow the channel. And if you want even more tutorials from me, you can come and join me over on Patreon, where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my patrons, and the catalog just continues to grow. We are well over 100 at the time of recording, and you can see every single tutorial that I've released on my Patreon over on my website. So check that out using the link in the description down below. That's enough waffling from me. Let's get into today's design. So once you've created your canvas, you're ready to go. You can see on mine that I have a layer here called guide, and I've got my guide in. You just need to download this PNG that I've provided, go to actions, go to the option of add and insert it from a photo from your gallery. So just save the PNG and it'll be empty. So what we'll do is we'll just tap on that and we'll probably bring its opacity straight down to maybe say 20%. You don't necessarily need to do that, but it's up to you. I'm going to. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer in front of the guide. We're going to go to our palette and we're going to grab the color in the top left of the palette. We're going to go to our brush and we're going to use calligraphy and the script brush. And if we tap on the script brush, I've got stabilization here set to around about 61 or 32. You may want to lower that if you want some more tremors in your little branches here. And the size is set to 32%. Now what the guide is, of course, it's a crow to me and you straight away, but we need to now sort of blend a tree into here. So taking a look, there's a really important element which is down here, which is the root. So we're going to go ahead and sort of start off right towards the very bottom, fairly heavy pressure just to start with. And then as we start to make our way up here, we want to slowly start to think about really getting nice and thin all the way up to the very top. Now we need to now start to kind of build off of this. You want to potentially go back through as well and add in like lots of tremors and different sort of bumps and lumps to this, trying to make sure it's not too straight, not too perfect. You know, you want your root down here to have some interesting action to it. And then while we're here as well, let's also go up to our actions and go to the canvas tab. We will turn on a drawing guide and we will edit that drawing guide to 1/4 of your canvas size, which should be set to 500 if you're using the same size as me. We'll hit done and then hit done again. Now what that allows you to do is that allows you to see where I'm drawing to in my canvas specifically. So just in case I'm zoomed in potentially, you can see I've gone all the way to around about the halfway point there, both height of that bottom row and halfway point of our actual canvas. And then I'm going to go ahead and just press a little bit firmer towards here. I want to try and create the bottom area of the kind of trunk of the tree here, just introducing sort of additional weight and ink in here. I'll block this in with a large amount of pressure. And then I'll just try and create some additional kind of roots off from the bottom. They don't have to sort of run off into thin tapers. They can always be kind of blunt shapes potentially as it makes its way down and into the ground, of course. You can leave large gaps in there in case you want to show some interesting kind of, again, sort of formation and you sort of layout of your tree root. Right from there, we want to go ahead now and try to sort of disguise our crow in here. Now this line here is pretty important as well. This one that will go all the way to sort of the bottom end of the beak here. So I'm just going to start to press a little bit firmer as I make my way in towards the branch and the main trunk, shall I say. And let's thicken that up a tiny bit. Now we don't want to just do certain lines all the time in terms of just trying to get all the way to the end point. We'll make our way there slowly but surely. So we'll just go ahead and we'll draw in a branch here that's maybe fallen, and that can go all the way down, potentially all the way down towards the back of the leg there. And then from there I can go ahead and maybe just draw off additional small branches here. Of course we don't want like a little blob, and we don't have to necessarily do it off of here. We can go ahead and go off of the tree sort of trunk there, introducing some more branches, and eventually we'll actually start to kind of lose the tree and the sort of the stencil underneath. The sort of tree that we're drawing will really take over and sort of show us where we need to sort of see and where the avenues are for all of the branches. Let branches overlap each other as well. I love that when people do that. It shows that you're understanding that it's not a flat object. Your tree has many sort of layers of depth to it. So I'm just making my way down the wing here, slowly trying to disguise all those elements in here. And let's go ahead and do exactly the same again, all the way down to say here. And you don't have to necessarily, again, do it all from that sort of branch that's fallen down here. You could go ahead and introduce some, really go in at different angles and have them sort of come in from the tree trunk. So use the different options. You don't have to follow exactly like mine necessarily. That is totally up to you and what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and sort of run a branch across here as well. You can see it gets really really all over the place in this space. And then you have to take a look at the design and say, well, we've got a branch here. How can we try to potentially link to that? Now you want to start from top to bottom. So this one here, we might have to sort of leave for a second because we need to work out a way of connecting it into the rest of our branches. So we're going to go along here. We're going to go down sort of the edge now of the tree, all the way down the end of the stencil. And then we've got another fallen kind of branch there. So we could probably go back in and maybe thicken that up, show like another branch there, just weaving over the top. We can, again, intertwine them, send them off in all sorts of directions. I can break that off from here and go along there too. And I could, again, branch that off, no pun intended, down the other leg of the crow, and then another little tiny branch there, little wiggles. And towards the latter stages, we're going to introduce a lot more branches in terms of smaller details. So let's just get our main roads in, basically, our main avenues for where we want to introduce our branches. Now we will thicken up the tree trunk in a minute. We're just trying to focus in this area. Now another important area here is going to be the eye. We really have to nail that down. So I'm going to start over here really light with my pressure and just go round the eye and just connect that into the tree there, the main part. And then I'll sort of go along that a little bit thicker now and just go all the way off, run one very close, and then maybe even another little flick up from there. Could probably make that even smaller potentially with a really light amount of pressure. And we can see what other avenues we can take. Let's go ahead and run one, say up here, and then it goes at a different angle and goes along there. We can go ahead and run one up there potentially. So that just nicely adds in a few of those details there that I've sort of added in through the stencil. We can go ahead and again add another one there. Nice and sort of wobbly with your lines will look fantastic. You'll get those branch shapes in there. And again, don't stress too much right now if you're thinking, well, it blatantly looks like the stencil. It will come about. Let's then go ahead and sort of flick one off at the top there, but then go ahead and go along all the way to the end of the sort of beak there. And then can we go ahead and sort of say, well, actually, maybe the branch sort of diverts. God, I can't talk at all today. Diverts over there, and then it diverts along here as well. And maybe I'll go back over that one. We'll run along here. And then we'll try and find additional avenues potentially for other elements that we can sort of run off from branches. So for example, I could go along here now and go all the way up and past that branch. I could go all the way to the end and just utilize this branch instead as the sort of main one there to add in sort of the basic area of the beak at the front there. I'm going to go along here. Now you could do this exercise potentially with loads of different animals as well, just sort of bury them within a tree. Just find something like a photograph and you could easily draw just over the top of it and create a completely different type of design with a different animal potentially. But this one, I wanted to have a crow, a little bit of a Halloween style theme to it so that we can bury something interesting within a design. Now I've actually got a design coming out on Patreon where we actually disguise a pumpkin within a landscape as well, which is really fun to do. So if you want to check that one out, you can check out my Patreon linked in the description down below. Now at this point, I'm adding in all of the kind of the branches that are just trailing down, they're facing down, they're coming down our crow, and they're just some really low hanging, very thin, very weak branches almost. So a couple of those just falling down from that top area. Now we still need to try to a degree fit this in. You don't have to always do that. You can leave certain areas really kind of barren if you wish, but you could go ahead and just run one straight off of there, let it go down, let it maybe just have an additional one running off of it. I'll thicken it up as it makes its way back in though, and maybe some additional ones there just running off, just to try and blend it in with the whole tree. Lovely. A couple of little wiggles off from there, and then maybe towards the bottom end down here we just add in a couple of really light ones just to try and finish up the last of those lines that we need for our design. Now, of course, you can turn off your guide underneath and just triple check that you've got kind of the aesthetic you want. You want that fallen tree, of course. Now, at this point, it might be really important then to go ahead and do the rear of the tree so you can get a full idea of the actual tree itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and just draw in another branch that's going to sort of run its way all the way up to the very top here. That's going to be my main avenue here, and I can go back down it. I can bulk it out as I make my way down, and then I can start to bulk this one back in as well and sort of show that actually this is the sort of primary part of the trunk of the tree, and it just wobbles and makes its way all the way up. I can throw some additional branches off of there as well, but it goes all the way up and off at the very top there. So it's really fallen over. It hit a bit of a right angle there, or a left angle, and it's just really just fallen off. So from there, we can go ahead and run in some additional branches off the rear as well. We want to kind of show that the tree has balance to it. That's why it's still to a degree upright. But we also want to kind of also abide by the styling of it. So we want to have a few branches very, very thin, just running down. So we want to try and just add in a few that just fit the styling, just so that that left side doesn't look like we're trying to do something on purpose. We want it to be subtle, don't we? We want people to look at it and go, I see a crow in there. And then that's the magic of it. You've hidden something in there. So in your captions, if you share these on Instagram, make sure to tag me, but also just say, what do you see when you see this? And I bet your friends might not see it straight away, especially once you sort of do all the lighting, etc. It really does get lost in there. It's really quite fun and almost sort of magical in a way, the way it just disappears into there. Now, as I mentioned, we want to get in here and just make sure we add in like very, very thin roots. You can get in there, sorry, with 3%, and I said roots again, but I meant as in little tiny twigs and branches, etc. They can go up, they can go down, they can run off, they can go beyond the initial shape that we created. Maybe there's a couple of shoots there just making their way up at the very top, and maybe even off the end of the beak there. Just these tiny small little flicks here and there will look fantastic. Extra levels of detail, and that's always sort of a trick that I like to do with Procreate in a whole, is have sort of small, medium and large size elements. The small ones then just give you that final little bit of detail. The large ones can set out the blueprint for the whole design. And you can run some, again, really all over the place if you want. And to be honest, the less you care, the better. You can just run little branches along here. Look at that, just running all the way through. Just trying to add some. Again, trying to abide by gravity in a sense though. That's the only thing. It's just like obviously making sure that they kind of point down and we have that tree fallen and the broken branch. And then when you add all these small little lines that we're adding in now, to me, this is the point in which the actual crow starts to disappear. It starts to fade in to the rest of the sort of scene that we're about to create. So you can create some additional ones. You can create some additional avenues to get really close to that outer line there. So a couple more branches just falling. And then we've got this kind of cluster, this cluster. And then right on the end here, we'll add in some more. So this is the main sort of part of this tutorial. So sort of set aside some time for this, really sort of make sure it looks nice and detailed. You've got all the little elements in there. We've got obviously the feet there. And if we go ahead and just triple check our guide, we did add in all the lines, so that's good. We'll just keep going. I just had to triple check whether or not I'd added in the feet there. I can just add in some more along the very bottom edge down here. Lovely. At the top here, I definitely could do with adding in some details, but you want to be very careful around the eye that you don't add too many sort of twigs or branches, etc., that just get in the way of that and ruin it, because the eye will really make it also look very odd potentially as well. So I'm just looking for some of my branches that are running off in different directions, loads of detail, and we just need to mimic that over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump ahead while I just carry on detailing. So I've added in all of my little details over there. Potentially I could go ahead and probably thicken up this top area here, just trying to make sure that the tree trunk itself has a good amount of sort of weight to it, that it could support these branches that have fallen over. So that's just a sort of consideration I want you to factor in yours, just so that, you know, it all sort of abides by the same rules. So that's your crow done. You can now move into different elements. So we'll go ahead and create a new layer. We'll drag it underneath our crow. We're going to draw in some ground. Now, we're just going to go to the crow layer temporarily and just tap on it and bring its opacity down to say 60%, just so that it's a little bit transparent. And then on that empty layer, so we want to be on layer 3 here, we just want to go ahead and draw in a piece of land that's going to sort of run in behind this root ideally, and then just run off and get really, really low all the way down and into the corner, and then drag and drop your color into there. We can also go back to our brushes. We can go to the option of, we're going to go into drawing and the evolve brush. I'm going to set the opacity to 100%, and I'm going to set the size down to say 6%. I'm just going to run it very, very lightly along this edge, not fully, but just breaking up a little bit of that script brush I just created. So hopefully it just breaks that down and making it a little bit less solid, a little bit more messy. Now we've got a crow in, we can start to make our way backwards as well. So let's just go ahead and go back to the crow layer, make it 100% opacity, so max. We'll go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to drag it all the way to the very bottom, and we're going to get started with some background elements. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It's the middle of the third column from the right. We want the evolve brush still, and we want the size to be around about say 20%. And we want to go ahead and run through the center point there of our design. So we want to kind of run through there. Now you may want to make that a little bit smaller, maybe around about 12%, but you're ultimately just creating like a hilly hillside, of course, but a tree-like hillside in the background, running around into there. Now potentially I don't like that end point, so let's go ahead and just run that through there again. And there we go. We'll just fill that in. And then once you've gone side to side, you can always drag and drop your color in and just fill in any gaps if you need to. And then we'll just run a little bit higher on this edge here, just to make sure it definitely looks like a hillside. We want it kind of tumbling down and into what looks like maybe a bit of a valley of sort down at the very bottom. Lovely. And you can just wiggle your pen in there to get some light little elements of detail potentially. We're then going to go ahead and then go to our adjustments. We're going to go to Gaussian blur, and we're just going to blur that 6%. So swipe from left to right, and at the top there it will go to 6%. Then we're going to go ahead and create another new layer. We're going to go to our colors, and we're going to grab the top of the 6th column there. We're going to do it exactly the same way we just did, except we will go to 20% this time, and we're just going to sit in front of it a little bit lower down, just creating another kind of tree-like hillside, and then just fill it in at the very bottom like so. Little wiggles, lovely stuff. Just a little bit of sort of layering to our background. And then we're going to move into the actual sky as well in the background. So we'll create another new layer and drag it all the way to the very bottom. We're going to go to our colors, and we're going to grab this color here, top right of the palette, and drag it into the page so it fills the whole of your canvas. We're going to go ahead and go to our layers and create another new layer. We'll go to our colors and grab the middle color in the far right column. We're going to go to our brush and go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Size, I recommend around about say 20 to 25%. And we want to go ahead and go round in a kind of circular motion. Just here is where our light source is going to be. So you just want to go kind of round in a circular motion. Let that light get a little bit higher into the sky, maybe a little bit further down as well, just trickling in behind that hillside. And then just blending that up and into the scene. So you've got a nice little bit of sunlight as such coming through. Then we'll go ahead and go to our layers and create another new layer. Now, just as a heads up, I always separate these types of things, such as the glow in the background there, in case I want to make a change to just that. Separating different elements can give you so much more flexibility later on, and the majority of people will be able to accommodate it with the additional layers. If you can't, I will let you know at certain points when you can start to compress your layers down. Let's go ahead and go to our colors. Let's grab this color here, bottom right of our palette, slightly darker, and we're going to make our way into the top right. And go around in a bit of a curve towards the top right and down a tiny bit, just adding in like a little bit of darkness. And then what we'll do is we'll go to our layers, we'll create another new layer. We'll go to our brushes. We're going to go into the option of elements, and we're going to use the clouds brush. Got the opacity set to 80%. We'll set the size to around about, say, I think we could go in the middle point there, potentially around about, say, the 15 to 12% range. And we're going to go ahead and just add in some layers of dark cloud. So we're just going to run sort of a light bit of cloud through there, a little bit of darker spots towards the top, and then maybe another layer in between. That's lovely. Little lighter specks towards the bottom. I might go slightly larger, about 20% up here, just making sure I press quite firm. And we wanted to draw in our crow first, because I don't want you adding clouds too much behind the crow, because we don't want to sort of have it sort of fade away into the rest of the scene. It obviously wants to be quite a prominent sort of character in your design. So A couple of darker lines almost. So a line here, a bit of a line up there. You can make them probably a bit darker, a bit bolder in that top corner. Maybe a tiny bit smaller, maybe with a little bit more of a focus on adding in a line in that corner. Now the lines will be very useful because we can add some sort of underlighting to them. So we'll go ahead and create another new layer. We'll go to our colors. We'll grab the middle of the far right column. We'll set the brush size down to 6% this time, and we'll make sure it's nice and small so that what we can do is we can just go ahead and wiggle a little bit of a brighter tone towards the underside of the clouds. Now we are going to smudge this in a second. So those lines that you drew, essentially, those shapes that you drew in, they're the ones you can add your underlighting to. So a little something under here, a little something around the base of this one. You can press kind of firm as well, adding in a good chunk of color, a little bit under there too. And that's it. That's all we want to do. We want to go to our smudge tool. We want to tap on our smudge tool, make sure it's set to airbrushing and the soft brush. We'll set the size down to around about sort of 2 to 3%. And on the top edge of some of these, just smudge them out in a circular motion, spreading out that light source. Now you have two options. You can push down. Notice if I push down, I'm smudging and I'm pushing all of the yellow down towards the edge of the cloud, lighting up just the underside of it. However, you can then go ahead and, for example, just smudge that back up again and just sort of diffuse the lighting and make it look a little bit larger. So you've got multiple options. So you can push down right towards the edge. They do tend to look really cool if you can push it right down towards the edge of that cloud-like shape, and then maybe just a little smudge here and there just to push a little bit of lighting backwards. And if you zoom all the way out, you get this really awesome looking underlit side of the cloud. Run that round again, similar concept. You push it right down if you want to, or you can have nice, large, fluffy clouds. Now, one thing you can do is if you've got the time to, you could duplicate this process again. So draw in another layer of darkness and another layer of lighting on top. And then that way you can end up with those real sort of staggered, layered sort of cloud shapes. Now I'm going to go ahead and just push this out just a tiny bit, just towards the bottom, just to diffuse it into the sky. And I'm going to go back down to the darker clouds and just diffuse them on the end here as well. Just if I think a few of those clouds look a little bit too messy in the sky, I'm just going to sort of smudge them out, wiggle them around, try and create a little bit of a less messy aesthetic. Lovely. Now let's go ahead and add in a light source here. So what we can do is we can go ahead, your sky to a degree is done. So these layers here, these ones all the way down to the bottom, you can group them together. You can rename that if you want to and call it sky. Or you can go ahead and group them or even pinch them together, or even tap on the group and flatten it into one, and then you save on your layers. But you don't end up with the sort of adjustments later on. Let's go ahead then and set a layer up here just in front of this dark hillside on the left. So we'll create a new layer, same color that we had, but we want to go ahead and set the blend mode from normal to the option of add. We want to go to our brush. We want to tap on our brush and go to the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. Maximum opacity and probably around about 25 to 30% here. We want our light source to be here. Your best option a lot of the time is just tapping a few times to get this kind of beautiful glow. Now, I'd urge you to lean on the side of sort of more subtle lighting. Don't overdo it. It's very easily done. You could go up to around about 30 if you wanted to and just tap a few times just to add in a bit of a light source in behind that hill. And then you end up with this really beautiful contrast now between the sky as it's opened up a little bit and the clouds. I will probably add in a cloud or two in here just to sort of diffuse that down a little bit towards in my sort of spare time probably after. Now let's go ahead and go through our layers now and add some lighting to that. So this layer here, the one that's in the background, we can just tap on it and we can alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. We'll go to our colors and we will go ahead and grab the bottom color in the third column from the right. Bring your soft airbrush down to around about, say, 15% and just add in a slightly lighter amount of color just towards this top edge. It's very, very subtle. So if you don't see too much of a change, that's why. We'll then go ahead and move forward to this hillside here on the left-hand side. I am going to create a new layer. I'm going to tap on that new layer and clipping mask it to that shape. So I can only sort of paint on this new layer in areas where this layer shows will be visible only. So if I go to my colors now and I grab the middle color in the 6th column, let's go to our brush. Let's go to drawing and evolve. Set the size about 20%. And where you've got your trees here, you kind of just want to wiggle your pen through here very lightly if you can, just to kind of show where the lighting is landing on this sort of hill-like sort tree formation here, this kind of forest land. I really can't talk today. I do apologize. You probably think I'm going absolutely nuts. There we go. We've got some little bit of lighting just on the edge there. Let's also add in some shadows as well. So we'll go to our colors and we will grab the color at the bottom of the 6th column. We're going to go ahead and zoom in. We'll add in a couple of dashes on the back of the tree, even where up to the edge of some of your highlights as well. And then just a couple of dashes in here, randomly scatter it through because it will really help it look like it's forest-like sort of shapes and lots of trees, etc. And then press really, really firm at the bottom here. It's quite a subtle color, I know, to see on camera, but we're just wiggling our pen with very light pressure so we get lots of specks in there. And you can press really firm in certain areas just to darken it out. But otherwise, you should end up with a little something like this. We can then go ahead and tap on the layer. We can tap on it and merge it down. So we'll tap on it and merge it down. And then this layer here, we're going to go to our adjustments and Gaussian blur. We'll swipe from left to right. We'll just blur that out maybe sort of 3%, just so it's got a little bit of blur to it. And then we'll tap on our adjustments when we're done. Now just in front of this, I want to add in some mist. So I'm going to go back to my layers. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to grab the bottom color in the 2nd column from the right. My brush wants to be set initially to airbrushing and the soft brush, but you want to press really, really lightly, around about sort of 25% brush size, very lightly, just down here to start. We want a very light coat in there. And then we want to emphasize this a bit more using the rainforest brush. So we'll go to our brushes, we'll go ahead and go into the option of organic, and we're going to use the rainforest brush right at the top. I've got the size set to 9% and the opacity set to 57. And you want to press quite lightly just towards the bottom and very slowly just layer in a sort of area of mist. A bit heavier towards the bottom will look fantastic. Don't sort of feel the need to go left to right perfectly over and over and over again. Leave gaps, let the mist sort of have areas to thrive and little gaps in there as well where it doesn't quite show. You want a little bit more towards the bottom, and that's why we're in full control. By setting the opacity nice and low, we can dictate which areas need to be a little bit brighter. That mist almost acts like a bit of a glow. And you could even go back to your airbrush, soft airbrush, and then just go ahead and lightly layer over the top of it if you want to just flatten it down a bit more. Now, this is the stage where we add in a really cool effect that blurs this out, gives it a really sort of soft, misty look to it. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to turn off our land at the front and our crow. And we're going to go ahead and swipe down with 3 fingers and go to the option here of copy all. You then want to go ahead and go where your guide is, just create a new layer and drag it underneath that guide. Then we'll go ahead and we will tap away. We'll swipe down with 3 fingers again and go to the option of paste. You've now pasted in, if you go to your layers, a whole layer full of your entire design. Bring back in your ground and your crow. And then this layer here with our full design on, we can tap on it and go to the option of lighten. You won't see too much of a visual change, but if we then go to adjustments and we go to Gaussian blur, this is where the magic happens. You swipe from left to right here and you end up with around about sort of 15%. You end up with this beautiful, soft, hazy look to the background. Like there's lots of mist in the air, and you can tap on your adjustments when you're done. And I urge you to sort of move it off to the side and turn this on and off just to see how much of an effect it has. It really softens everything down in your background. Now at this point, it's time to focus on our crow. By the way, you can turn off your drawing guide if you wish as well under canvas. So let's add some sort of details to the tree. So what we'll do is we'll turn off our ground because it is the same color. So we'll just turn it off for the moment. We're going to go to the tree. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to tap on it and clipping mask it. And while we're here, just to keep things nice and organized, we'll swipe from left to right on both of those, group them together, and we'll just rename this by tapping on it twice and call it tree. So this layer here that's clipped, I'm going to temporarily just double tap in the top left to select white. And you can do the same as well. We're going to go to our brush library. We're going to go into the option of organic, and we're going to find the twig brush. So we've got twig in organic. Maximum opacity, size can be set to the 12% mark. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of design our tree and understand the contours of our tree. So the twisting and the contorting of the tree. So the first thing I want to do is just come down here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just allow that to run down what is this root here. And then that's my main twist. That's my main pivot in the tree. I'm going to add in another additional line underneath it. And what we're doing is we're just accenting all of the different root lines and the curves and twists in the tree and just highlighting them and giving them some detail. Now the white, as I mentioned, is only temporary. We will sort of add in more tree-like tones. And then as we sort of see this side here sort of tuck underneath, because this one up here is dominant, we need to try and show that. So we're going to go up along this root here and then just allow that to kind of twist underneath. I'll do exactly the same here. I'm going to go all the way along this root and allow it just to run all the way up. I'll do the same here as well, just kind of show a little bit of twist under there. And what you're doing is you're revealing all of the curves, as I said, the twists, the nature of the tree at the bottom. And to be honest, the more you add in here, the better it will look. To a degree, that rule, needs to be sort of thought out. You don't want to add in too much in terms of just overdoing it. It's more about purpose. How can you show the curves and the twists of the tree and how it grew in a certain direction, and maybe because of this weight change and shift over to the left, it's now started to really twist and change its approach. So maybe I'll sort of bring that one across as well and show how that side has to now get involved in twisting the tree round. And then when you end up with a sort of avenue here, you can then decide which one sits in front of which. Could you come down here, for example, like from the left-hand side, come all the way down here and into the tree body, which now pushes this one slightly further back. And again, you can kind of add in twists and curves by going sort of side to side of elements. So I mean, I've gone left side there to top side. Here, for example, if I go up here and then twist along and go along that branch, I'm showing how it again twists and contorts and spins around the opposite side of the tree. So you can really have some fun detailing your tree, adding in all of these avenues for how it just maneuvers, how it's grown over time. This is such a fun process for me. I really enjoy it. Just being able to design the tree, how it makes its way around and just sprouts out of there, and just really fun, really beautiful to look at as well. And then maybe that runs all the way up into that branch, and then maybe we add in a couple of twists across the top edge as well. A couple more right along the very top edge. Now we don't necessarily, to be honest with you, need to get all the way into all of these grooves. The only thing you want to look for is quite large sort of shaped branches, such as here, that would probably face that light source. So for example, the underside of here, the underside of say in there, and then maybe some very small elements in there. But because these ones are so thin, we're probably going to lose a lot of them. So you could do it on both sides of this one because it's right behind the light source, and then maybe just on the top edge of here because it's now lower than the light source, of course. So we're just adding in a few little details on some of the larger elements in there. The twig brush is great because it gives you all of these multiple layers to it in terms of in the actual brush. You can see all of those little lines and streaks, and that helps you just really go to town with adding in all of that detail. Over here on the right, we maybe don't need to add in too much, again, just on those little elements that are probably facing the light source. Now at this point, let's go ahead and set that to the correct color. So we'll go to our layer, we'll tap on it, we'll alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. And all we'll do is we'll go to our colors and grab the middle color in the first column. We'll go to the layer, we'll tap on it and we'll fill it. So we'll fill it with that color fully. We'll then go ahead and add in some highlights on top of those. So you've still got your blueprint there underneath. It's just more muted tone now, of course. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. Now what I want to do is essentially clip my new layer to this layer, but this layer is already clipped. So we're getting some clip inception here. So what you can do is you can tap on the layer you want to just draw within the shape of. You can tap on it and select it. So you've selected its shape. Now it's really important that color fill is grayed out. Otherwise it will just fill the whole shape with color. So gray it out like so, and then go to the layer above, tap on it and add a mask. So what we've done is if I tap on my selection tool now and I make sure I'm on this part here of the layer, so here, we've added a mask to it that matches the same as all of those root lines you created. Now you can just go ahead and accent on top of those root lines. So we can grab the bottom color in the first column, still working with the twig brush. We can go ahead and just accent all of the lines we think now would get a little bit more color. So what you can do is you can now build up tone. You can leave a few of them in the shadows. You don't want to accent all of them, of course, but you can come down all of your roots here where you think they're going to catch some lighting in that groove in the middle. Of course, I want to try and leave that a little bit more barren in terms of darkness, and go up this edge here, most definitely all the way up because the lighting probably wraps a little bit. Ultimately, I can make that decision anyway. the underside of some of those branches at the top here that you may have sort of added in some highlight to. And because we're sort of not able to fully see the layer underneath, you're kind of at your mercy of being able to say, well, if I might not be sort of able to fill in everything, and that's a good thing. You don't necessarily need to add highlight onto everything. Sacrifice it, let it sort of fall off, let it just disappear into the shadows, especially with something like this. So let's go ahead and just find some of those lines in some areas that we think the lighting would stretch to. But you can see I've left the right side over here because I don't want that lighting to stretch. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go to our layers, we'll swipe this layer to the left and we'll duplicate it. So we've got another version of it. Then the top one, this part here, you want to tap on here and go to the option of clear. Now we've got another layer with another mask on, so we can add in one further highlight tone. So we can go to our colors again and grab the bottom of the second column, and we can go back through and we can just add in some highlight on top of here, for example. Now what you could do is go to your brush and make life a bit easier and go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Set your size to something a bit smaller, say 4 or 5%, and just accent where you want your highlight to be, just using the soft brush instead. So a couple of highlight tones on there, really bright kind of yellow in comparison to those purples. Again, I'm not going to do everywhere. I'm now just doing exactly where I want just the main highlights to live. They'll go up along some of these branches that face the light source, definitely along there. I can go down some of these branches here as well, just to bring them into play. A little bit up the top, a little bit along there. I could even do the same over here. We kind of sort of left this side over here, so I could just add in a little bit of an accent lighting along that top edge there and blend it out because it's a soft airbrush, of course. I could add some on the top edge of this branch and a little bit on the back there, a little bit at the top, like that. There we go. We've got some really cool lighting on our tree. So let's go ahead and bring back in our ground. If you're done with your tree, you're more than welcome to tap on it and flatten it, but of course I'd advise you to keep it if you can. Your ground here, turn it back on. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer and tap on it and clipping mask it on top. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and utilize some of these colors here, not all of these tones, but the majority. We'll grab this color here, first of all, the top of the fourth column. And first off, we can just go to our soft airbrush with a 10% and maybe just add in a light coat of brown up towards the top edge, and especially in this open area of land at the bottom, and just fade in a bit of brown here, like so, just to sort of reveal the ground area. It's very subtle. Then we'll go to our colors. We'll grab this red tone here, top of the third column. We'll go to our brush and go to the option of artistic. We're going to use the leatherwood brush. We're going to set the opacity to 77% and the size down to a really small 1 or 2%. And you can just run your pen at sort of random wiggles and angles down the banking here, creating some just random areas of unevenness in the ground. You can make your brush size a bit bigger, around about 2 or 3%, and probably bring it down even to 50% as you make your way a little bit closer towards you. So a little bit over here, random wiggles of color in the ground. Leave gaps, leave gaps. And towards the end, we will add in some shadows again. So you don't need to sort of worry if you overdo the color. We can just fix that shortly. So a couple of streaks through there just to show elements of the land that are grabbing some lighting. Down here in the bottom right ultimately should be quite dark. And then we're going to go ahead and go to our colors. We'll grab the middle color in the third column, and you want to be really scarce with this. You want to press really lightly. Go along some of these edges, wiggle your pen if you can, tap a few times just to sort of leave gaps, little sort of areas like this along that top surface. Lovely stuff, little accents to the ground where that light is just brightening up some of these random patches. Don't do all of it. Sacrifice some of these sort of orangey brown tones, leave them in the shadows, just let them be. Then go to your colors. We're going to grab this color here, top left of the palette, and that's the same color as the background, meaning we can now go ahead and sort of in behind our tree here, we can in behind some of the roots, you can add in a bit of a shadow around the base of them, underside of some of them. And then behind some of these areas of color, you can just wiggle your pen through, creating deep dark grooves in the ground, creating the divots, adding in some shadows. Break up some of your color tones as well if potentially you added it too sort of neat. You want it sort of broken up. You don't want to add in too much color. Breaking it down, keeping it nice and subtle, running your pen back through some of your tones there. And as I said, just over here, just make sure it's nice and dark in this sort of bottom right area of our canvas. Lovely. Just adding in a bit of a shadow in behind there. Because my opacity set to so low, I can get back in there and just layer up the color. Now, you should just need a little bit of texture on the ground like this. And then we can go ahead, and when we did that lighten layer earlier, we can go ahead and add in another version of that. So we can go ahead and go to the very top of our design and create a new layer. We can go ahead and tap away, swipe down with 3 fingers again and go to copy all, and then swipe down with 3 fingers again and go to paste. Again, you'll get another version, same rules apply. We just tap on this layer, we change it to lighten with its blend mode, and we tap on our adjustments, Gaussian blur. Now you don't need to go as large as the previous one. We're only looking really for this foreground. So you can add in a little bit of a glow on there, maybe 5%. You could go really high and give it a really misty look to it, but that's totally up to you depending on how much kind of effects you want to add. I would call this just an effect of sort. So you can go up to say 5% there, and that gives you a lovely bit of glow. Tap on your adjustments when you're done. And then this is super optional. You do not have to do this if you don't want to. You can create a brand new layer right at the top. You can go to your color and grab this color here, top left of the palette. You can go to your brush. You can go back into calligraphy, and we could grab this script brush again. And then what you can do is you can just draw one massive tree over here, right on the edge of your canvas. So all the way to the very top. Frame your kind of design a little bit. Again, of course, make sure it's got some detailing to it in terms of it's got some sort of interesting content to it. And then you could just run a branch like this, a little bit higher, a little bit over the top of your design, right here in the foreground. You can bulk it out a little bit. You can add in all of those little wiggly branches. Take your time potentially adding it in. I wouldn't add in too much that it sort of overshadows your crow. But you could add in some lovely wiggles just in the same way you did before. Now, I've mentioned that this is optional because, truth be told, I don't really know which one I prefer. So let me know in the comments if you prefer it with or without the tree kind of border as such. And add in a couple of little branches just running off from the sort of lower point here. But I can't tell whether or not I like it with or without, just simply because, is it too much tree? Is it sort of taking away a little bit, or is it filling in a gap that we need? Is it taking away from my clouds now in the background? So once you've got a little something like this, again, I would not overdo it. I'd keep it simply just adding it in as a bit of framing. You can go to your adjustments, you can go to Gaussian blur, and you can swipe from left to right and just blur that tree out. It's a bit too close to the camera or us looking at it. So you can blur it out to about 4%. You can tap on your adjustments when you're done. You can pinch with 2 fingers. You can go full screen with 4, and you end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this hidden crow design. So I hope you enjoyed today's design. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them. Instagram's a really good place that you can do so. You can tag me in them, and maybe I'll even share them to my story. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. It will help me a bunch. I'm on my way to 50,000 subscribers. It would be amazing if you could subscribe to the channel and support the work that I do here. But if you want to take your support a step further, you can come and join me over on Patreon, where you can get access to a catalogue of tutorials that is well over 100 at the time of recording. I add 3 more every single month to the catalogue, and it just continues to grow. You can see every single tutorial design I've made over on my website, so you can check that out first before you join. And you can have your name featured in videos, sneak peeks, early access, and much, much more. So check that out using the link in the description down below. And if you like this Halloween themed design, you'll love this playlist of all of my other previous Procreate tutorials that are Halloween themed. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.